Good morning. And I miss you. Start off. That's how I like to start off every day, telling you how much I miss you. And I wish that you could be right in front of me doing this lesson. So I'm super excited about today. My cup matches you bunch of crazy minions I got over here. So I'm super excited because remember, we've been talking about measurement, and today we're not measuring length or weight or capacity. We're actually measuring time. Now, I know all of you have seen a clock, and you always ask, is it time for lunch? Is it time for recess? Is it time for resource? What time? So now we get into where you can tell time and read a clock. So before we start, let's start with this video about what is a clock before we get into our lesson today of measuring time. And we're looking at what are the parts of a clock and how can I divide the clock into quarter hours. Ooh. So when it says divide the clock into quarters, we should already be thinking about fractions because we're dividing a whole into equal parts. So we'll get on with that. But first, let's watch this awesome video that I found. All right.
Is a solid necklace, bro. This isn't just a necklace. This is a clock. What's a clock? Well, listen, we use tools all the time. They help us measure, like a thermometer to tell the temperature. There's a tool for telling time. It goes tick-tock. That's right. We tell time with a clock. You want to know what time it is? Don't call the cops. Just look at the wall. That's a clock. And that's a watch. You wear it on your wrist. Is this the clock on my phone? Yes, it is. You see clocks all over, all around. This one, that one, these make sounds. Some look cuckoo and some look great. We keep them around so we won't be late. If a clock only has numbers, then it's digital. I love digital clocks, they're unforgettable. If a clock has hands, then it's analog. Analog clocks might hang on your wall. We read time from the part called the face. It's round like a pizza with a much worse taste. Oh, and those tiny clocks that go on your wrist are called watches. They tell you when to split. A clock has a face number 1 to 12. We tell time by where the hands are held. The hour hand's short, the minute hand's long. The second hand's fast, follow along. A clock has a face number 1 to 12. We tell time by where the hands are held. The hour hand's short, the minute hand's long. The second hand's fast, follow along. Come on. The analog clock has a part called the face. Does it have 2 eyes and a mouth? No way. It's numbered 1 to 12 in the circle, you see. Okay. 12 is at the top, then it goes 1, 2, 3, and all the way around and back to 12. Make sure you pay attention to the hands as well. They point to the numbers and tell the time. They only move in one direction, clockwise. The short hand on the clock is the hour hand. It tells the hour, which helps us plan. See the long hand? It moves faster. That's the minute hand. It tells the minutes passing. A clock might have a second hand too. Those have the most speed, like a cheetah at the zoo. When the minute hand points to 12 at the top, the hour hand points to the hour old clock. School's at 8 o'clock, the hour hand is on the 8, the minute hand is on 12. Yeah, okay. And now the hour hand is on the 1. That's 1 o'clock. Recess time is fun. Now the minute hand is up and the hour hand is down. That's 6 o'clock. Do you see it now? It's dinner time. Someone pass the mayonnaise. Telling time's key. It helps you plan your days. A clock has a face number 1 to 12. We tell time by where the hands are hands long. The second hand's fast, follow along. A clock has a face numbered 1 to 12. We tell time by where the hands are held. The hour hand's short, the minute hand's long. The second hand's fast, follow along. Come on. Whoa! Now I'm gonna be able to get to places on time. And I'm gonna know what time it is. This is blowing my mind.
So, speaking of blowing your mind, let's review some of the vocabulary that we heard in our video. I hope that you're really paying attention to the words. And the first part that we have is a clock face. Remember, it's not a face with like eyes and a mouth. It's called a clock face, and it's what shows us those numbers. It's the front of the clock where all the goods are. All right, 2 kinds of clocks. If you remember in the video, they mentioned both of these. There's an analog clock and a digital clock. A digital clock is when it shows you the time in numbers. You don't have to figure anything out. I can look at this clock right here and say it's 7 o'clock. An analog clock is the clocks that we see like up on the walls in the schools, in the lunchroom on the wall when you're looking above Mr. Gallon on the cafeteria wall. If you can remember that on that back wall, there was an analog clock, and it has a clock face with minute hand and an hour hand and a second hand. Okay, so before we start actually getting into telling time, want to look at, because this is going to be a different way that you've never looked at a clock before. So, and some of you already know how to tell time, and that's okay. That you can go a little bit faster in the video if you'd like. So first off, when we look at it, you'll see that this clock looks a little different than any you have ever seen before. That's because a clock, if you actually think about it, remember we said that a clock is a circle. And what they've actually done is they've split this circle into 12 equal parts. Why 12 equal parts? This is where we get into the AM and the PM. Look at, here is a clock. And we always start, the new day actually starts when you're sleeping. I know it's crazy, huh? So it actually starts in the middle of the night. That's why we call it midnight. And the clock goes around and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours. And that is when we have noon. Why we call it afternoon or midday. Some people call it midday, just like they call when it starts the day, they call it midnight. Well, this is called afternoon. That's why we say good afternoon starting at 12 o'clock. And anything before that, like 11 or 11:59, is considered morning time. And then it goes another 12 hours. And then it starts back over at midnight and it starts a new day. Now, you'll be able to look at these. It'll be in the slides. You can go back whenever you want to. But that is why the clock is actually split into 12 equal parts. If we look here, this is where we said that it starts, that 12. And remember, when we see the time on here, because you already know that the shorthand is the, hope you said hour hand, and the longhand is the, yes, minute hand. So this is the minute hand, and this is the hour hand. each hour has its own room. Think about this. And I'm not crazy. Look at here on our clock. When we talk about those 12 equal parts, it's because between the 12 and the 1, this is actually 1 hour. So when we see that shorthand and it's moving so slow, that is 1 hour. I'm sorry, let me show you on my clock right here. Now this one, you'll notice as the time starts moving, it's the minute hand moving, and that's where we get our 60 minutes in 1 hour, because this minute hand goes all around. And it's going around 60 times. Well, it moves 60 times all the way around the clock till it gets back up here. Now, if you notice, our hour hand is not at 12 anymore, it's at 1. That's because it's moved into a new room. When we look here, now it's in the 1 o'clock room. It's in the ones room. So the minute hand goes around again. And remember, this is how we get 60 minutes in an hour, because that minute hand moves 60 times around the clock, and that equals 1 hour. Now you'll notice that we're in the twos room. And on here, this is why we say it's the twos room, because anytime the minute hand is in between here, it doesn't matter. The hour is going to be 2 o'clock, because our hour hand, our shorthand, is still in the twos room between the 2 and the 3. You'll notice that, and this is true with all analog clocks, is that as the minute hand, and it moves a little faster, but you'll see that that hour hand is slowly creeping towards that threes room, but it's doing it slower. You don't see it as much because it doesn't have to move 60 times. It only has to go and move the hour to show us. So it goes real slow, and it's creeping up to the threes room, but it's not quite there yet, because it has to go that full 60 minutes before it can get into the threes room. Once it gets to this 12, which starts a new hour, that's why our hour hand will now be pointed directly on the 3. And my minute hand is showing me that it's 0 minutes past 3 o'clock. So look up here. That is why our clocks have 12 numbers on them. Those represent our hours. They have their own rooms. Now, why is this important to us? If we look, here's a progression. So here, they're showing you this is the ones room. This is still what we call the 12 o'clock, because remember, that 12 o'clock has a room too. That 12 is what starts our day. Remember 12 midnight? It may say midnight, but it's actually the start of our day. And onto a more basic that we can see, that we're used to seeing. But see how the lines, they still show you where the rooms are. So if that hour hand is still between this line and this line, then the hour is still 2 o'clock, because it's still in the twos room. To kind of help us figure out why there's 12 equal parts, what the importance of them are, Here's a short video on AM and PM. Like when we say it's 11 a.m. or 11 p.m. or we're in school at 9 o'clock, but you have to be in bed at 9 p.m. and we're in school at 9 a.m. Let's watch this video.
Mr. Hour and Mrs. Minute start walking at 12 o'clock in the middle of the night. They call this time midnight. Let's make a start, Mrs. Minute.
But it's the middle of the night, Mr. Hour.
Please call it midnight, Mrs. Minute. When Mr. Hour has walked right around the island, back to the 12, it is the middle of the day. They call this time midday. In one day, Mr. Hour walks around Clock Island twice. To remember whether he is going round the first or second time, Mr. Hour calls the first time round AM.
Can't we rest, Mr. Hour? We've been walking all morning.
Please call it AM, Mrs. Minute. 12 o'clock, middle of the day. When Mr. Hour has passed 12 o'clock midday, on the second time around Clock Island, he calls this PM.
Are we past midday yet, Mr. Hour?
PM, Mrs. Minute. Remember, AM is first, by thinking it stands for all morning. Actually, we Romans made this up. AM stands for anti-meridian. Remember, PM is in the afternoon, by thinking it stands for past midday. As Romans again, it is really Latin for post-meridian.
See, now wasn't that a super cute video? But let's go ahead and stop that one before it starts. And back to our slides. So, if you're paying attention in our video, what they're talking about is this starts our day, and it actually is the middle of the day too. Because what happens is, how many hours are there in a day? 24, right? And our clock is divided into 12 equal parts. Well, how many times do you have to add 12 to get to 24? Correct, 2. Just like 2 times 12 is 24. So the clock, the minute hand goes around one time, 60 minutes, and that equals 1 hour. So if the clock goes around 60 times, and that's 1 hour, then what happens is we go through and the clock keeps going. See, the minute hand keeps moving, the hours keep going. And when the minute hand has gone around 12 times, then we're back to where we started. You'll notice that the hour hand is now pointing at the 12, just like the minute hand, just like when we started. This is the start of our second 12 hours, like afternoon. So when we start, it started at midnight, and we went 12 hours, and then we come into 12 p.m., or the afternoon, and it goes around, and it keeps going, and we go for 12 more hours, which means that that minute hand goes around 12 more times. And when it goes around 12 more times, then we're back at midnight. Ooh, I'm sorry. Trying to do this on the video. See, if you were right here in front of me, then it would make it much easier. So then our minute hand has gone around 12 times, and we're back at midnight. This is the start of the day. So when you're reading or when you're looking at a clock, we know that this long hand is the minute hand and the short hand is the hour hand. I want you to look and you'll notice the numbers are always real big. They stand out. And then we have these smaller dots or smaller tick marks that are always around a clock. There's 60 of them because those are minutes. And because there are how many minutes in an hour? 60 minutes in an hour. Great job. In order to be able to see those little minutes, we need a longer hand to point exactly where the minute is so that we could tell. The hour hand doesn't have to be as big because those hours are really big. We can see real easily where that hour hand is pointing to. We can see if it's still in the 12s room, or is it still in the 1s room, or is it in the 2s room. The hour hand is shorter because those hours are bigger. We can see. The minute hand has to be long so that it can help us point directly to those small minutes on the outer edge of the clock face. Remember, this is a clock face. Remember this. One way to remember is minute is a long word. It would go long. An hour is a short word. So our hour hand is the short hand, and our minute hand is the long hand. As we've already discussed, and just putting it on here, there are 60 minutes on a clock face. If you look, all these little dots, these are those 60 minutes. So when we talk about our minute hand going around 60 times, it's counting each one of those minutes. Let's start here. So it's 1 minute, and that would be 1 minute past the hour. That's 2 minutes. That would be 2 minutes past the hour. And you'll see that we've gone 2 of the tick marks. There are 60 tick marks all the way around. Those are our minutes, 60 minutes in 1 hour. Well, imagine that we needed to tell time quick. And I say imagine because we all know that we can't just count each time. It would take too much time if we had to count the minute hand. What if we were way over here? Are we going to count each one of those minutes by 1? No, just like multiplication, there's an easier way. These hours are also like checkpoints for the minutes. So when my minute hand is on the 1, now remember, this is my long hand, so this is my minute hand. This is not telling me that the hour is 1 because my hour hand is still in the what room? I hope you said the 12s room because we can see that from here to here, We're still in our 12s room. If we look back at our earlier one, at our earlier clock, our hour hand is still here. Even though our minute hand is on the 1, those rooms are only for the hours. Okay, so, but they are like checkpoints. You'll see a 5 up here. That's because when the minute hand has gone from here, it's counted 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. So those are like checkpoints. These hours, these big numbers are actually checkpoints for our minutes so that we could skip count by 5s. So I know that this is 5 minutes past the hour. This is 10 minutes past the hour. And what is our hour? Our hour hand is still in that 12s room. So the hour is 12. And right now, it's 10 minutes past the hour. So it would be 12:10. And as we keep going, if I count another 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, now I'm at 15 minutes past the hour. These start our hours. These start our minutes, because the first minute will always be right after that 12. And then we skip count by 5. So 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, 35 minutes, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, 50 minutes, 55 minutes, and then it's 56, 57, 58, 59, 60. Now, we don't ever say 60 minutes because it starts a new hour, right? Remember when you're grouping 10s and you get 9 1s? Well, when you get another 1, you have 10 1s. We don't say 10 1s, do we? We say that we have 110. Well, it's the same for minutes. When we get to that 60 minutes, we know that we've went 1 hour, but we don't say, well, it's 12:60. That's when we say o'clock, to tell us that it is on the hour and is 0 minutes past the hour. Okay, so as you can see on our example, it says, so what happens when my minute hand is pointing to the 12? Then we read it o'clock. Remember, because it's 0 minutes, that's why we write after the colon the 2 zeros, because it's 0 minutes past the hour. If we look at the hour hand, our shorthand, is pointing to the 3, which tells me that I'm in the 3's room. It's starting the new hour, and this would be 3 o'clock. When the minute hand, and it goes around 60 minutes, and it goes around 60 more minutes, which is, what is 60 minutes? An hour. So I was at 3. The minute hand went around twice, which means how many hours passed? If it went around twice, it went around 60 minutes. That's 1 hour. Then it went around 60 more minutes. That's 2 hours. So 2 hours after 3 is 5 o'clock. We know that it's 5 o'clock. It's 0 minutes past 5, or it's 0 minutes after 5. So we say it's now 5 o'clock. What time is it now? I hope you looked at the clock and you could see that it was 1 o'clock. Because why? Our minute hand is pointing to that 12, so it tells us that it's 0 minutes past the hour. And our hour hand, that shorthand, is pointing to the 1. Now it's pointing directly at the 1, and we can see that it's still in that 1's room, so the hour is 1 o'clock. We did this one, 3 o'clock. And this one will be 6 o'clock. So I hope that for today, you remember your parts of a clock. Remember the basics when we talk about 60 minutes in an hour. Our long hand is our minute hand. Like the word minute is long. It's like our long hand, a minute hand. And our hour hand is short, like the word hour is short. For your classwork today, you need to fill out this Time Basics Google form. This is your independent classwork for today. Remember, you should still be doing Freckle every day to practice that multiplication. This Friday, you are going to have a multiplication quick quiz. I will explain later on how to do it, but you need to make sure that you're practicing and getting on Freckle and doing the must do every day. I will put this Google Slides in the presentation or online. Remember, the Google Slides are only in there so you can have them for notes and to use them if you need to go back and you don't have the whole video. There's nothing that you need to do. It is so that you have the notes that I'm using. Well, I will see you again tomorrow morning, and I miss you all, and please continue to do a great job of turning in your work and working really hard. I also want to point out that I put in this Smith check-in form. So I'm going to I want to see how you're doing over there. Nothing about school, just how you're doing. I care about you and I miss you, and I want you to know I wish that we were in the classroom together. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you again tomorrow morning. Bye, class.